It's April 21. It's episode 182. It is, an appreciated $1.3 million house that's not livable. Sorry about that. This is 39.6 Facebook and YouTube Live Finance Show, the show that teaches high earners like yourselves how to make your money work for you so you don't have to work for your money. We talk general investing, taxes, real estate, syndications, Airbnb, paying for college, paying for childcare, and even the car you drive. Today, episode 182, an appreciated $1.3 million house that is not livable. What do I do with it? All right. So this question comes out of a Facebook group. Person says, a friend is recently divorced and was awarded one of their 2 jointly owned houses, and she's looking for advice on how to proceed. The house was purchased in 2010 for $750,000. So that was 11 years ago. It has not been lived in since. It is not a primary residence. I don't know what the person means by this. Was it a rental property? But to leave a $750,000 house vacant for 10 plus years is surprising to me. It is now worth $1.3 million. So that's a hefty profit. That's $550,000 out of $750,000 of original earnings. So that's like, what, 70% gain over the course of a decade. However, it needs about $200,000 worth of work to be livable. There are holes in the roof, so it needs a new roof, it needs a new retaining wall, new windows, new siding since the siding is warping. There are no appliances. There are no floors in some of the rooms. It says they were wiped out. Then, after the repairs, it would sell for approximately $1.65 million. Okay, so if you put $200,000 into it, you think that it'll go from 1.3 up to 1.65. So that's almost getting like a 100% return on that additional money. Not quite, but $150,000 extra. So like 75% extra money return on the $200,000. She is trying to decide the best option. She does not particularly want to keep the house, but she does need a house to live. What would you advise? Sell the house and pay the capital gains. Person says it is a hot market in the area. It is a hot market right now, but in this area, quote, it is never hard to sell. And if she sells before 2 years, she would have to pay $175,000 in capital gains tax. Any suggestions how to minimize this? If she purchased another home shortly after, would this save any money in tax? Number 2, okay, so the first option is sell the house and pay the capital gains. Number 2 is live there for 2 years, then sell and pay less capital gains. Number 3, rent the property. It says may get $5,500 a month with all the work completed. Number 4, any other recommendations? Okay, so there's like so much stuff to digest in this question. How to go about this first? First of all, I find it amazing that there's a house that was potentially vacant for a decade and $200,000 worth of work needs to be done on it to make it livable. Like, let's get this straight. $200,000 can literally build a house from scratch. So I am finding it hard to believe that it would actually take $200,000 to make a house that already exists livable. Now, there are definitely properties for which that would pertain. So, for example, I think it's Nellie who has a house out in like Kansas or Missouri, this gigantic mansion that was never completed. I've seen it posted on Facebook so many times the past few months. It's on sale for like, I think only $600,000. Seems like a steal, but it was built with so many problems. It's not completed, and I've heard it would take like $1 million to finish the project. Something super high, but it's a gigantic house on a gigantic property. I don't know how big this house is. You bought it a decade ago, $750,000. I don't know where this is, but $200,000 is a lot of work to put into a property. Now, certainly $200,000 could be like a very nice rehab for a lot of places, but to make it livable seems like a stretch. Now, granted, my wife went to 2 properties last week. It's crazy. I mean, this market, everybody says the market is crazy, but Monday went to a house and it was on the market for listed at 1.4 million. And they had best and final offers required by Wednesday. Went to another house on Wednesday, and this was posted like 2 weeks ago by the owner, for sale by owner, and the person was out of town. Had a whole bunch of showings on Wednesday last week when he got back into town, and was already offered like 1.6 on a 1.4 house in cash. But both of these houses needed a lot of work. Like this is in Highland Park, and these are potentially $2-3 million houses, maybe even higher. And we looked at that first house and we're like, oh my gosh, the owner has lived there for the past 58 years. We're like, gosh, it really could be $200,000 we would pour into the house, like very comfortably. There were people there who were saying, yeah, we could put $500,000 into this house. Now, the house was livable already. Okay, let's get this straight. And the property was listed on MLS. The house was absolutely livable and mortgageable. If you have a house that is not livable, it's often not mortgageable because a bank will not usually lend on a property that is not livable. So you usually have to get it at least in livable condition to get it to be mortgageable. And usually you don't sell properties on MLS unless it's in livable condition. Now, if you have a property and you're selling it for lot value, sometimes they will say, you know, this is priced at lot value, and they won't even let you see the property because you're literally buying it for the land. And in that situation, yeah, those will often be on MLS. Sometimes they'll sell a property that is listed at lot value and it will just be literally listed as land. You'd have to like change your filters to get land, even though there's a house there. Some people who are looking just to build, they will only be looking for land and they will miss these properties that are being sold for land value. So sometimes they will just literally list it as land even though there's a house on it. So $200,000 to make it livable honestly sounds like a stretch unless this is some gigantic house. However, cost of labor and materials, particularly lumber, right now are absolutely insane. So if you have like roof and walls and everything in the house and you really need to do all this work, depending on how big this is, sure, you could get there. If this is like a $4,000 square foot house, $200,000 of work, that would be $50 a square foot. $50 a square foot is a pretty good rehab budget for somebody who fixes and flips properties. $50 a square foot can pretty much redo like an entire property. Maybe not quite right now, maybe it's more like $60, but $50 a square, 55 is what we used to remember like maybe 5 years ago. So yeah, easily probably 60 for a flipper. If you are buying retail for all this stuff, yeah, it'll be more expensive. But a new roof, a retaining wall, windows, siding, I don't know how, and floors, I don't know how quite that gets to 200K. But maybe, if it's big enough and all that stuff is expensive enough. Now, let's pretend that it is quote unquote livable, but it's maybe not livable to your standards. You could still list it on MLS. We were looking at a house just last week. It was listed at $485,000. in Preston Hollow, like super nice part of Dallas. This is where George W. lives. He lives in Preston Hollow. This is where Mark Cuban lives. Okay, it's where a lot of wealthy people live. And this is like on the cheaper part of Preston Hollow, but still Preston Hollow. $485 for a 4-bedroom, 2,400 square foot property. This is $200 a square foot. Crazy cheap for this area. We check it out, and we were given a 5-minute time slot because they had so many people booked up for this. And we were one of well over 10 offers. And even though we offered $500,000, that was not good enough, and not surprised. But we walked in there. There's like not quite a hole in the floor, but basically a hole in the floor in the dining room. There was definitely damage to the roof, and they had already provided a quote for the roof repair. And this was on MLS. And yeah, they showed it for 3 days. They could have asked for best and final within 2 days, but they showed it on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and maybe even Tuesday before noon, which was best and final. So, I mean, that property went on MLS and went no problem. Was it livable? Sure, it was livable. There were definitely things that needed to be repaired, but water work, there's electricity, people were living in it, and that was definitely a sellable property. The reason I discuss all this is because if your property right now, you really think you can get $1.3 million on it, I would highly consider taking that $1.3 million now while you have the chance. If it was bought for $750, and I don't know how much down payment was put into this, but if you sell at 1.3, you're at $550,000 of capital gains. I don't know your tax situation, but probably a lot of that will be taxed at 15%, because it's definitely long term. Maybe part of it is bumped up to 23.8%. It's still not bad. It's just capital gains tax. Now, that $200,000, if you really think you're going to spend $200,000, if you've never done this stuff before, it could seriously go over that. And who knows how long that would actually take, and the amount of time and effort that will go into it. Even if you're not doing any of the work yourself, even if you have a general contractor, you're still like spending your time, stress, energy, dealing with the contractor, general contractor, making decisions, change orders, checking on the house, making sure they're not stealing stuff from you, all sorts of stuff. It's a lot of work, and you have to put a valuation on your time, energy, stress, etc. But if it's really $200,000, that could be a whole year of work, and who knows what will happen a year from now? Who knows what the market will do? Who knows what interest rates will do? Maybe the property prices stay high, but maybe interest rates go up and it really slows the market down. And maybe you end up having a lot more holding costs. I mean, it's not said what the mortgage is on this property, but if you bought a house for $750,000 10 years ago with a mortgage, you're still making payments on that, right? So I would really like to cash out on this deal and take the money. Now, you're already at long-term capital gains. The question is, should you live there for 2 years to decrease the capital gains? Well, okay, if you're not married anymore, you can only exclude $250,000, not $500,000 of capital gains. So the capital gains on $250,000 is only $50,000 over the course of 2 years to save that kind of money. I mean, you could invest money. Let's say you invested $40,000. That could easily be $50,000 2 years from now. So would you really try just to save like $40,000 of today's money to make a decision to live in this much more expensive house than you probably need to live in, or maybe want to? It sounds like you said you don't want to even live there. So you're sitting on all this capital that could be released, and you could invest that money somewhere else. So I see a lot of people who make decisions based on trying to save some money, but miss out on the opportunity cost of all this other money. Okay, because there's like $500,000 here that you could invest and make a ton more money on invested. Okay, now rent the property for $5,500 after doing the work. Okay, now I think this is absolutely the worst option, because you are putting in $200,000, waiting a year, and I'm assuming about a year because it's $200,000 of work, and dealing with that. Then you're getting $5,500 a month. I don't know how much your mortgage payment is again, underlying. If you had a $750,000 mortgage payment, I don't know, that could just be like maybe $2,000, maybe $3,000 a month. Okay, I don't know, it's 10 years old, so it could be cheaper. But let's just say it's $3,000 a month, but now you're paying property tax, or you've been paying a property tax on a $1.3 million house. I don't know what state you're in. If we just take 1% of that, that's $13,000 a year, so that's another $1,000. You're paying like $4,000 mortgage payment and property tax without all the maintenance. And I think that might be a little bit conservative. And so, but you also just dumped $200,000 of cash into this. So you're making at most $1,500 a month in cash flow, but really you pay property management, put repairs in there. Let's say you're at $750 a month of cash flow, and that's like $9,000 per year. If you just spent $200,000 on it and you're cash flowing $9,000, that's only 4.5% return on your cash of the $200,000. There's also all that money you put into the property at the beginning, and there's also all the equity you have in the property now. So your earnings on that money, I mean, it's close to like nearly zero, maybe 1%, 2%. Unless you really need to hold on to that property for some other reason, it doesn't sound like you really want to hold on to this. That just seems like a really bad idea. Because again, you could sell this right now and make $500,000 and pay some capital gains tax, walk away with still like $400,000. $400,000 invested into a different real estate asset that could cash on cash 7%, then you're looking at like $28,000 a year with like no stress. Okay, and that's just on the capital gain portion. You also have that $200,000 you were going to spend to get the property ready. You can invest that too. So it's like $600,000, 7% cash on cash could give you $42,000 a year. And then there's also whatever equity down payment you had before. So from an opportunity cost standpoint, there's just so much more money that can be invested if you just liquidate. So, and then number 4, so any other options? So I'm going to go rank where I think these are from top to bottom, or bottom to top. So I think the worst option is putting $200,000 and renting it, because I don't see what your exit strategy is with this. Like, when do you get out? What are you holding on to it for? It's already appreciated a ton. And if you really want it for the cash flow, there's so many better places to invest your money to get the cash flow. So I think that's the worst. Number 2, live there for 2 years after. I'm assuming you're going to put $200,000 into it, and just to save a little bit of capital gains tax, and you don't even want to live there. So I think that's the second worst option. Okay, the third worst option, I think, so like less bad. So putting in the $200,000, fixing it and selling it, that is not as bad of an option. I just think it's a waste of a year of your time. But I also don't know how much this person's time is worth, right? They have a over $1 million house. So I'm going to make an assumption that this person has high earning potential, but I don't know that for sure, okay? But they had 2 houses and they split them, and one of them was worth $1.3 million. So there's another house there. They probably had over $2 million worth of real estate. So there's a lot of money here. I think your time is valuable. I wouldn't do that unless you already really know what you're doing. You're comfortable doing real estate projects. You invest in real estate, and you're going to do this project well. If not, then I would go with my first option, which is just simply to unload the property. If you really can get it unloaded at 1.3, just get rid of it. Take the cash, reinvest it somewhere else. Buy yourself a separate property or rent your own property. You don't need to hold on to a property just to have a place to sleep. You could live in a hotel, frankly, and save yourself all the headache of holding on to and living in a house you don't even want to live in. Because at this price point, and you're talking about a $1.5 million house, like there's a lot of cash you can be working with. And even if you're spending $200 a day in a hotel, okay, or renting a place for $6,000, $7,000 a month, that's going to likely be a really nice place, and you wouldn't have to have all this capital outlay and all this capital stuck in this property you don't want to hold on to. So I would liquidate and get rid of it right now while you have the chance to cash out before you miss the opportunity. All right, that is it for today's episode number 182. Today is the last day to sign up for the Multifamily Masterclass. Please join us. We're going to have a good time. We're going to do Thursday night happy hours. The first one is tomorrow. Let's see if we have any questions here. Yes, unlivable, that house, Patrick. Yeah, I don't know what house that is. Oh yeah, I mean, I told you that it doesn't have flooring. It needs new windows and a retaining wall, and that there's holes in the roof. So yeah, probably not really up to a lot of our standards at the exact moment. Okay, that's it for tonight. Again, this is not financial advice, not any sort of advice, simply education for myself, maybe for you. Until tomorrow or the next day for episode 183 on our way to 200. Have a good one.